Hey everyone, my name is Zubaz, and today we are going to learn about Vlookups. All right, let's make this a little bigger so it's easy to see. So Vlookup, what does it do? It looks through a vertical column in one list, and if it finds a match in another list, it returns an adjacent value in a different column. So that sounds like a mouthful, it sounds complicated, but we'll go through a couple examples and it will make sense and you will be able to understand exactly how it works. So down here on the bottom, we have a mini example. I mean, this is tiny, so in this case, a VLOOKUP is not going to save us any time. But in our second example, you'll see how it can be very helpful in saving time. So we have this first list with just two entries. We have name, food, time of day, and we're missing this last column. Over here, we have that info. So you can see the first column, name, we have that in both columns, but we have that in both lists, but that's the only piece of information that is the same. So that is where we can use a VLOOKUP to find the name in this list. So we look in this column, it finds it over here, and then we return some information. So let's see, how does that work? There are a couple different ways to bring up a VLOOKUP, and I'll show you the way I do it, but I'll show you a few other ways. The first way is you could go to the Formulas tab, and under Lookup and Reference, you will see a VLOOKUP, and you can click it, and you'll get this little pop-up box where you can start filling out your info, and it will go here in this cell. That's an okay method, but there are a couple other ways that are a little bit easier because you can be on any tab. So you can also just hit equals and you can start typing VLOOKUP, and once you see it, just hit tab and it will load it. If you're familiar with how to do a VLOOKUP, you can just fill it out from right here. You can start typing in your value and then put in everything else that you need and so on. But again, that's not the easiest for people that are new. So probably the easiest way to do it is just to do equals, VLOOKUP, hit tab, and at this point you have two options to bring up the dialog box. You can go up here and click insert function and it will bring it up, or once you start it, you do your equals, VLOOKUP. You can hit shift F3 and that will also bring up the function arguments box. And right here, this is the screen that usually confuses everyone and they think that a VLOOKUP is very complicated. I'll show you a few ways to make this simple. So lookup value, that one actually is exactly what it sounds like. That is what value do we want to look up in our first set of data right here. And we want to look that up over here and bring something back. So in this case, you can just click right here and say we want to look up cell A11. All right, and table array, now that does sound kind of complicated, but all that means is in what range do we want to look for this value that we just selected? Well, we want to look right here. I actually highlighted the wrong one right there, but that's all right, we can go back. We can select what we want to look for. And then where do we want to look for it? We want to look for it in these cells. And column index number. Again, it sounds complicated, but all that is what column do you want to return once you find your value? So our first column, we could put in a 1 right here. That wouldn't make any sense because we would just return the name we're searching for. In this case, we want to put in column number 2 because we want to return the info in the second column. Range lookup. So there are two options here, true or false. I almost always use false because if you use true, that will find the closest match, but you have to be sorted in alphabetical order, and really there's no need for that if you know you can find an exact match. If you put in false, it will only return an exact match. Now if we hit OK, you'll see it brings back the value we expected. So we searched for the name Zubaz in this range, we found it, we moved 1 to the right, and we returned the column 2 value. We could do it again right here. We could put in VLOOKUP, and we'll do the whole thing by scratch again just so you get familiar with how to do it. We'll tab over it, we'll hit Shift F3. Now what value do we want to look up? We'll look up Henry, which is A12. We will look it up in this range, we will bring back column 2, and we are going to put false because we want an exact match. And there we go. We returned number 18. Now, there are a couple things to know about VLOOKUPs before we go to a bigger example. First thing that we want to know is you have to have the same value in the leftmost column. So what does that mean? That means if we're looking for name Zubaz, we can't look for it in column 2. So for example, if name and guests were switched around, it wouldn't work. We couldn't find Zubaz and then backtrack to a different column to find it. So we have to start in the first column. So that's one downfall. And then another one is when we're searching, if it doesn't find it, you might think that it's making an error because it'll show NA, but that isn't necessarily the case. That just means it didn't find it. And we'll look at that in our next example. Okay, so that was a very small example. It didn't really make sense. But let's go to our second tab here. And now we have 1,000 entries. There are 1,000 people who have signed up for a race. You can see in this last column here, we have race. They either signed up for the 5K or the 10K. We have all of their names, email addresses. And don't worry, none of this is personal information. This is all just random data that was generated by a mock data generator. And so this is our first tab, but when everyone signed up for the race, let's say the t-shirt order form was not working correctly. So later on, everyone went back and was supposed to sign up for a t-shirt. Now we have names and IDs, and we have all this info at the end. So gender, shirt size, sponsor, shirt color, and date ordered. But how do we get this info together? And if we look at this list, we'll see, oh no, we only have 327 people that actually ordered a shirt. You can see how this would be incredibly time consuming if we were to try and somehow sort these by alphabetical order, by first or last name, or try and get all this info in here to get both of them on the same tab. But with a VLOOKUP, it's pretty easy to do. So first things first, we just want to figure out what info, this info, gender, shirt size, sponsor, shirt color, date ordered. We want that info, so I just hit Control-C to copy. We're putting it down here at the end. It's Control-Shift-L to take off the filters and then put them back on. So we'll just do this and that. Now we have them all on there. And I'm just going to highlight this and double click to auto fit everything in the cell or in the column. So this is the info that we want, and now we can create our VLOOKUP to get that info. There are a couple ways to make VLOOKUPs a little bit easier, and the first method or way to make it easier is to go to the range where we're going to search, which is our t-shirt order tab, and highlight all of the columns with your data. If you want it to be specific, you could just highlight that section itself, but what happens if we end up adding some more data to the bottom, like some more people order shirts late? Then we would be missing that. So what I like to do is just go to the top, make this whole section, and we'll just call it shirts. So now we named that range. You can see at any point we can highlight it. Shirts, there we go. And it just goes all the way down. So now we'll come back over here and we'll start our VLOOKUP. So you can do your equals, start typing VLOOKUP, hit tab, shift F3. Now you have your little pop-up box. So lookup value. Well, that one's easy. We know we're going to look up the IDs. So we go here and we select A2. Table array, again, that's just what range do we want to look in? Well, we just named a range, so instead of having to go highlight it, all we have to do is type in shirts and hit tab. Now when you do this, make sure that you remember exactly how you spelled it, or if you put in a caps to start, a capital letter to start or not. And you'll know if it's matching something when you get your parentheses with 3 periods here. See, right now there's nothing, it's blank, but if we put our S in, there we go. Now column index number. Now this is a little bit more complicated on this example because when we go back over here, we have a bunch of columns. So you have to count them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Gender, that's the first column. So we want to return column number 5. And if we go back to our sign up data, you'll see that we will return column number 5 right here. And in range lookup, we want false. Hit OK, and you'll see we bring back an M. Now, if you really wanted to check this, we could go try and verify it, and probably the quickest way to find it would be ID. So we have ID 1, and we go over here, and you'll see ID 1, and we have a male. Okay, that's easy enough, but now we go 2, 3, 4, 5, and over here we don't have all those. We go from 1 to 3, because 2 and you can see 2 and 5 didn't order a t-shirt. So the first one is looking good. Now you're thinking, oh, do I have to type that in on all of them? No, you don't. All we have to do is we'll copy this info, and you can also just drag it over like this if you want, but you'll see it does something a little funny because now it's saying NA. Well, you wonder, why does it say that? Because it moved from A2 to B2 right here. So all we have to do is put this back to a 2 or an A2. We'll put this back to A2. This one. And this one. But now they're all showing M. And we don't want that. That's just the gender in each one. But what we need to do is move our column over one. If we go back to our other tab, we'll see this is column 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So now we just need to change these numbers. So we'll look up A2 in range search, return column 5, and make sure it's an exact match. Now we'll go here, and what we want is column 6. And then we'll go to this one, and we want column 7. And we'll go here, we want column 8. And last one we need to fill out is column 9. Now we can just highlight this, and we'll just double click it down. Now we have all of our info filled out. There are a bunch with NA. Well, what does that mean? That just means that person did not order a t-shirt. And we could simplify this a little bit and make it so that this data doesn't change, because right now you'll see we have a VLOOKUP, and if we happen to delete this t-shirt orders tab, all of this would just show NA. So probably the easiest way, highlight all of it, hit Control C to copy it, and then just go to paste values. And now you'll see the VLOOKUP is no longer there, and it's just the values. And at that point, we could hit Control H, and we could replace. So we'll say find what? We want to find all of the NAs. You have to type it exactly as you see it, and we'll replace that with no t-shirt. And just hit replace all, and this one might take a little bit of time. You'll see how it's kind of slowly thinking its way through there because there's a lot to replace. But it'll take a couple seconds, and look at that, we replaced 3,365 cells with new information. Now we have all of our information combined together on one worksheet, and that's a VLOOKUP. So thanks for watching, everybody, and I hope you learned something. Have a great day.